Hey guys, I'm back. It's been a while, but I've got another awesome deck for you today. This time it's an adaptation of my Mermail deck with some of the new cards that have come out lately, as well as some new tech and some penguin cards that I thought were really fun and make for a very interesting combo that lets you mirror force your opponents on their turn outside of their battle phase. Let's get into it. As usual, we're going to go over the monsters first. Starting us off is the Deep Sea portion of the deck, featuring 3 Deep Sea Diva. If you didn't know by now, when you normal summon this card, you special summon a level 3 or lower Sea Serpent from your deck. This is really powerful, although it is a little weak to cards like Effect Failure, but this is kind of the linchpin of the deck, and if it resolves, you're often going to be in a good position to win the game. Next, we're running 3 copies of Deep Sea Minstrel. This is a really cool card. It's a level 3 Sea Serpent tuner, so you can special summon it off of Deep Sea Diva's effect, and you can discard it with the water monster to banish a card of your choice from your opponent's hand until the end phase. You're almost always going to be using this as like a preemptive call by the grave. You can discard it to look at your opponent's hand, rip out their most critical hand trap, maybe their Nibiru or their effect failure, and then that will let you get your Deep Sea Divas and your full combos off without any worry of interruption from your opponents. And the last Deep Sea we're running is a single copy of Deep Sea Artisan. This is a little bit of a garnet, a little bit of a combo piece. When it's added to your hand by a water monster effect, you can look at your opponent's hand, which can be useful, kind of like Deep Sea Minstrel. It'll let you know what you have to play around that your opponent might have. If you see Nibiru, you know you have to go for a negate early. If you don't see any hand traps, you know you can play free. That's useful. But the good effect is when it's special summoned, you can special summon a low-level water monster from your graveyard. So it's just a really powerful extender for a lot of your combos. It's also a level 1 Sea Serpent non-tuner, so you can summon it off of Deep Sea Diva, and then Synchro for 3, or go into Crystron Halqifibrax. And what goes well with Deep Sea Diva, you ask? Why? Neptabyss, the Atlantean Prince, 3 copies. This is probably the strongest card you can special summon off of Deep Sea Diva. It's a level 1 Sea Serpent, and you can send an Atlantean from deck to graveyard as cost to add an Atlantean from deck to hand, which is just really powerful. It lets you proc your Atlantean effects, particularly Atlantean Dragoons, and if it's sent to the graveyard by a water effect, you can special summon an Atlantean from the graveyard, which is just gravy on top of that first effect. You can even do both of these effects in the same turn. This card is the reason Atlanteans even have a place in the metagame at all today. Then we have the best target for Neptabyss, and honestly one of the best cards in the entire deck. 3 copies of Atlantean Dragoons, which has a very simple effect. When it's sent to the graveyard by a water monster's effect, you can search any Sea Serpent from your deck to your hand. This is definitely the most critical part of our Deep Sea Atlantean engine. Without it, the deck actually doesn't even function, so I'm really glad this is at 3. Next, we're running a fun little card, Atlantean Heavy Infantry, 3 copies. The first effect of this card is when it's face up on the field, you can normal summon an additional Sea Serpent that's level 4 or lower that turn, which comes up sometimes. It's a little vulnerable, and you don't often want to be normal summoning infantry right off the bat, but there are some hands where you have like double Deep Sea Diva, and you would just want to Diva, Infantry, Diva, Neptabyss. You can really go far with this card. It also has a second effect. When sent to the graveyard by a water monster, you can destroy a face-up card that your opponent controls, which is extremely important, and is a very critical part of a lot of our end boards, is to have a quick effect way to send this to the graveyard, which then allows us to quick effect pop a card, kind of like a build your own Trident. Then our final Atlantean is 1 copy of Atlantean Marksman, which when he's sent to the graveyard by a water effect can destroy a set card. I really go back and forth on even playing this card because set cards aren't as popular as they may have been when he came out, but I think 1 copy is really critical just as a way to toolbox your way out of interesting or difficult scenarios, especially with a lot of decks like Dogmatica and Shadalls and stuff in the format. There will often be a lot of set cards that you can pop with Marksman. Next, we're running 3 copies of Swap Frog. These are the core components of the Frog engine. I used to not really run the Frog engine all that often, but in a post-Nibiru world, I think the ability to make a totally awesome to negate Nibiru before it can drop is really powerful, and it is also a very strong extender. Just a Swap Frog and a water monster in your hand with a Marincess Curl enemy allows you to make a totally awesome without using your normal summon, which is very powerful, and it's just nice to have that easy, quick extender in your hand. You can discard a water monster, set this up, set up a Ronin Totem, and then link off the Swap Frog, summon the Ronin Totem, link off the Ronin Totem. You don't need to be making totally awesome for Swap Frog to be good, and it really helps you play through hand traps and just play through difficult situations from your opponent where they might stop your Neptabyss play or stop your Deep Sea Diva play, and then you can have some follow-up using the frogs. To go along with the Swap Frogs, you have to have your partner in crime, Ronin Totem. Everybody knows what he does at this point. He's been around forever, summoning himself, making totally awesome, making life annoying for your opponent. And then we are running 1 copy of Dupe Frog. Often I would steer clear of running the Dupe Frog because it's a bit more of a brick than the Ronin Totem is, but I've built this deck to have a really easy time making Deep Sea Prima Donna, which allows you to get right into your Swap Frog. You're more reliably going to have a totally awesome because of the way this deck functions. It gives you a negate that also gives you card advantage, so I really like having the 1 copy Dupe Frog just because totally really awesome, consistent. Now we're finally to the Mermail portion of the deck. They used to be the headliners, but now they're more of a supporting cast to the Atlanteans and the Deep Seas. Starting us off with 2 copies of Mermail Abyss Megalo. It's just a big beat stick that can discard a couple of monsters, get your effects off of your Atlanteans, and often can swing for game. He also searches the spell negation in this deck. And critically, he's a Sea Serpent, so he's a searchable way to get a discard outlet and a special summon in your hand that happens to be level 7. Just a really nice card to have. Then we're running 3 copies of Mermail Abyss Tias. There we go. This is probably the best Mermail. He's unfortunately an Aqua, so he doesn't synergize quite as well with the Deep Sea Atlantean part of the deck, but it's just a really nice discard outlet to special summon this and search up your other smaller Mermails. He's a really good extender, and he lets you make rank 7s and level 8 water synchros. And then for our Mermail Abyss Tia search targets, we're running 1 copy of Mermail Abyss Pike as a nice normal summon, and his level 3 search utility is something that I try to take advantage of quite a bit in this deck, using Deep Sea Prima Donna, and occasionally just by normal summoning it or special summoning it with Mermail Abyss Gund, which we are also running 1 copy of as another Mermail Abyss Tia search target. It can be really nice to special summon Megalos and Tias is back in the graveyard after they've been linked away. Helps you make rank 7s and level 8 synchros a little more reliably. And there's also the Mermail Link monster, which is really strong, and it can be special summoned back out by Mermail Abyss Gund, which gives this deck a crazy grind game. So that's kind of it for the engines and archetypes in the deck. Now we're kind of getting into the searchable cards, the tech pieces, the first of which is Guitar Gurnard's Duonegus, which is a bit of a newer card. This dynamic duo, when it's special summoned, banishes cards from the opponent's deck equal to the number of water monsters you control when you activate it, which by itself is not a very powerful effect, but when you combine it with Deep Sea Prima Donna, it allows you to always get the Prima Donna effect off. Conveniently, the second effect of Guitar Gurnard's Duonegus allows you to double the level of a low-level water monster that you control in the field already, which in the case of Deep Sea Diva means that you'll have a level 4 water tuner, and then Guitar Gurnard's is itself a level 3 non-tuner, which allows you to instantly synchro summon into Deep Sea Prima Donna, which is very, very powerful and is what gives this deck such reliable access to Swap Frog. Next we have the Hand Loop King, Mulan Glacia, the Elemental Lord. It's a Sea Serpent, so you can search it off Dragoons, and you can special summon it if you have 5 waters in your graveyard exactly, and you rip 2 cards from your opponent's hand at random, which is very, very powerful. Then we're running 1 copy of Lapis Dragon. Lapis Dragon is a really powerful extender in the deck. It's a level 5 Sea Serpent tuner that you can search off of Atlantean Dragoons, and when it's added to your hand from your deck or graveyard, you can special summon it immediately, which when combined with Neptabyss sending Dragoons, adding Lapis Dragon lets you instantly synchro for 6, or make Crystron Halqifibrax, or any number of other powerful plays. Our final Sea Serpent extender is going to be Xyz Slydolphin. It's a level 4 Sea Serpent that you can special summon whenever you overlay for an Xyz monster, which comes up kind of often because of Swap Frog and the dual level 7s that you have in the deck. It can also be useful sometimes as a searchable level 4 Sea Serpent that is not named Atlantean Dragoons, so you can search it off of Dragoons, and then you can make Deep Sea Prima Donna using Tatsunoko from your extra deck. And then I'm running 1 copy of Fishborg Launcher, which is a level 1 fish tuner that you can special summon back from the graveyard if you only control waters in your graveyard. This is our Crystron Halqifibrax target, because you can bring it out, link it off, or synchro with it, and then immediately bring it back out for more material. Now just a couple of little tech pieces in the deck here. I wanted some more extenders, so I added a couple of more extenders. 1 white Stingray, which you just special summon by discarding water. It's like a mini version of Abyss Megalo. And a copy of Sea Archiver, which when it's in the graveyard, you can easily special summon it back out. I didn't want too many extra extenders because the deck is already kind of tight, so these are the ones I settled on. Now we have our 2 additional garnets beyond just Duke Frog. We have 1 copy of Nightmare Penguin. This is the Penguin engine axis in the deck. There's actually a level 6 synchro that you can make very easily with Neptabyss and Lapis Dragon that allows you to set a penguin and then activate it on your opponent's turn. Nightmare Penguin is my choice for that. It makes all your water monsters get 200 attack, which is kind of nice for OTKing or getting over powerful monsters like Red Eyes Dragoon, for instance. And then when it's flipped up, you can target a card your opponent controls and return to the hand. So any spell, trap, field spell, monster, whatever. And then we're running 1 copy of the Mighty Floodgate Turtle, Testudo Erat Newman. He makes it so neither player can special summon any monsters that have more attack than he has defense, which is 1800. And he's very powerful when you can special summon him in defense mode using cards like Marine's Coral Anemone or Mermail Abyss Alacia or, I don't know, Deep Sea Princess Prima Donna. Very powerful card. And it is a level 2 or lower Aqua monster, which means you can send it to the graveyard with Swap Frog for some cool plays. So that's kind of it for our monsters, but now we have the spells. Starting off with 3 copies of Deep Sea Aria. Deep Sea Aria is really powerful. You banish a water from the graveyard to add any level 4 lower Sea Serpent from your deck to your hand, so it's just like a reinforcement of the army for Sea Serpent monsters in a way. Then we're running 1 copy of the Abyss Scale of the Mizuchi, which is an equipped spell you can search with Mermail Abyss Megalo. When it's equipped to a Mermail monster, it gives it 800 attack, and then you negate the first spell effect that resolves in your opponent's side of the field. Overall, you always need to run 1 Abyss Scale, and I think the spell negation one is the best, especially now that we have Forbidden Droplets and Super Poly and Dark Ruler no more floating around. Scale of the Mizuchi prevents that from getting in your way. Then we're running a couple of power cards here with 1 copy of Monster Reborn. And the other power card is 1 copy of 1-for-1, which in this deck is great because you can special summon Neptabyss, the Atlantean Prince, who is probably the single most important card in the deck. 1-for-1 is at 1 for a reason, they say. And then to top us off, we're just running 3 copies of Moray of Greed. There are a few water monsters you'd rather not draw, and there's a lot of water monsters that you do want to see, so I just run 3 Moray of Greed to help kind of turbo through it, put the things back in the deck that you want in the deck, and try to draw into the really good half of the deck. So that's that for the main deck. Moving on to the extra deck. We are running 1 copy of Tatsunoko, the adorable baby worm synchro tuner, with the effect that allows you to synchro summon using 1 monster from your hand. It's level 3, so you can make it using Deep Sea Diva and Neptabyss. Neptabyss searches Atlantean Dragoons, you make Tatsunoko, and then Tatsunoko plus Dragoons allows you to make Prima Donna, which can be pretty nice, especially if you were able to use a Deep Sea Minstrel early in the turn and got a card banished for the Prima Donna effect. Then we're running 1 copy of Crystron Halqifibrax, which is a nice synchro tuner that you can quick effect synchro during your opponent's turn with. This is most of the time going to be your Halqifibrax target on your opponent's turn. You're going to tag into this, and then Quandex will let you synchro summon into something powerful on your opponent's turn, like Adamancipator, Dragite, or a White Aura Whale to negate or destroy some of your opponent's cards using monsters that are left over from your combos previously. Then we have 1 copy of Penguin Brave. That's what makes this technically a penguin deck. It's a level 6 synchro that's generic. You summon it, and it lets you set a penguin, which includes Nightmare Penguin from the deck, and then whenever your opponent activates a monster effect, you can flip up a penguin card. So if your opponent activates a monster effect, you flip up your Nightmare Penguin. It's really nice. Then we're running the star of the show, Deep Sea Prima Donna, level 7 synchro, which you can make a ton of different ways in this deck. The deck is kind of built around being able to make her. You have Diva into Guitar Gurnards or Diva Neptabyss into Tatsunoko. Both allow you to make this card very reliably. Her effect is extremely powerful. You put back a banished card to your opponent's hand. You can special summon any level 4 or lower water from your deck to the field. She's also a core component of a little hand loop you can do, where if you activate Minstrel and rip a card from your opponent, Prima Donna, when she is sent to the graveyard, allows you to shuffle a banished card from either player back into the deck, hit the card that you hit with Minstrel, and they won't get it back at the end of the turn. So she's part of kind of a hand loop combo line that you can go if you want to. Next, we're running 1 copy of Adamancipator Risen Dragite. You can negate a spell trap once per turn on every turn, which is just really powerful. And since it's level 8, you can actually use the Nightmare Penguin and the Crystron Halqifibrax to make this. So if your end board is kind of weak, maybe you got hand trapped really bad, and all you have is a Crystron Halqifibrax and a Penguin Brave, you can actually bounce a card with the Penguin and then use Quandex to make a Dragite and have a spell negate as well. And then here's the real reason I run that Quandex combo. White Aura Whale, which when it's synchro summoned, mirror forces your opponent's board, just destroys all their attack position monsters, which is really strong when you can do it as a quick effect, which Penguin Brave and Crystron Halqifibrax alone allow you to do. It's a really fun card to summon, and you can actually just make it in this deck on your own turn, or you can make it on your opponent's turn, which is, I think, the strongest possible use for White Aura Whale. And our final synchro monster is 1 copy of Ravenous Crocodragon Archithis. This used to be a copy of Trishula, but I found that Crocodragon was coming up more often and isn't really that much worse than Trishula, given that it draws you a card. I mean, it's obviously weaker than a Resolve Trishula, but with how much easier it is to make, and the fact that you can make it using Mermail Abyss Megalo and Deep Sea Diva, I do think Crocodragon's a little better. Now for the Xyz monsters, we're running 1 copy of Totally Awesome, which just works obviously very well with the Swap Frog engine. In fact, it's the only reason you run the Swap Frogs. Totally Awesome is totally awesome. The next Xyz that we're running is 1 copy of Abyss Dweller, which this deck runs better than any other deck because you actually run the water monsters to buff your board, and on top of that, if you detach an Atlantean Dragoons to activate the Abyss Dweller's effect, you get to instantly search any Sea Serpent because this is a water monster and you are activating the effect of the water monster by sending Atlantean Dragoons to the graveyard. The final Xyz that we're running is 1 copy of Mermail Abyss Gaios. He's really cool because you can make him with Mermail Abyss Megalo or Abyss Tias or Deep Sea Prima Donna, and he's just a huge skill drain, like a once per turn quick effect skill drain for your opponent. The other nice thing about Abyss Gaios is you can make him and then equip the Abyss Scale of the Mizuchi to preserve your spell negate. Next, we're running a small selection of Link monsters, including 1 copy of Mermail Abyss Alacia. On your opponent's turn, you can send a card from your hand to the graveyard to search any Mermail card. This allows you to trigger Atlanteans, and is typically the way that we're going to quick effect activate heavy infantry to do a quick effect pop of a face-up card. The other good effect that this card has is when it's destroyed by your opponent and sent to the graveyard, you can send any water monster from your deck to your graveyard and special summon any water monster, yes, any water monster from your graveyard in defense position. So I guess any water monster except a Link in that case. But what's nice about this is even though it's like a destruction float against a lot of opponents when they've had their hands reduced by Mill Glacia and they have all your negates to fight through, they're not going to have a good way to just get rid of this without destroying it. So they're forced to either leave it there for repeated advantage or get rid of it and give you even more card advantage by allowing you to float multiple times, multiple ways, proccing a heavy infantry from deck or a dragoons from deck and just destroying their stuff searching. Mermail Abyssalacia is a critical component of our end boards. Then we're running one copy of Marincess Coral Anemone. This is a very basic effect. All you do is special summon a 1500 attack or less water monster from your graveyard to its zone. This includes such powerhouses as Swap Frog, Neptabyss, and Numen Era Testudo. Then we're running one copy of everybody's favorite card, Crystron Halqifibrax. The nice thing about this is, yeah, the combo where you tag him out into Crystron Quandax to use your Nightmare Penguin to make a Mirror Force during your opponent's main phase. That's really what he's cool for. The next water link is a Mistar Boy, which is actually a more important part of the deck than it looks like, because he allows you to turn random non-fish, non-aqua, non-sea serpent monsters into an aqua monster, so you can easily make Mermail Abyssalacia from any position. Not the most powerful card in the deck, but definitely a key player. And then our final link monster is one copy of Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Chaos. The most important thing about him is probably that he's very expensive, but after that, the ability to out things by non-targeting banishing them is very critical. He's also very difficult for your opponents to out if you make him using the level 7. Just kind of a key role player. I kind of think of it as an honorary Mermail extra deck piece because of how easy it is to make in this deck with the secondary effect proc thanks to Abyss Megalo and Abyss Tias. That does it for the main deck, and it does it for the extra deck, which only leaves the side deck. Obviously, the number one best thing is to side according to what your local meta requires, but in the case of this deck, because of how synergy based it is, there are some picks that can help you a little bit more than just siding in the staples. The first of these is a copy of Penguin Soldier, which you can just swap back and forth for the copy of Nightmare Penguin in the main deck. You can easily access it thanks to the Synchro, and sometimes you don't want one bounce of any card, you'd rather have 2 bounces of monster cards. Next is one copy, and only one copy, of Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood. I know that this is like trash tier Max C, but what this has that Max C doesn't is Ghost Sister is actually a level 3 water monster, which means it is searchable off of Mermail Abyss Pike. So if in the course of your combos you end up making Mermail Abyss Pike, you can search like a knockoff budget Max C to use on your opponents if they're particularly weak to that sort of special summon spam locking effect. Then I would recommend having one copy of Barrier Statue of the Torrent in the side deck. Numen Era Testudo hits a wider range of decks, in fact it hits all decks, but if you know that your goal is just to lock them out of the game with a floodgate and your opponent is not running a water deck, Barrier Statue of the Torrent will completely lock them out, whereas Numen Era Testudo still allows them to summon some things. Then because this is a water deck and it's heavily water synergy focused, if you're going to go second, I would recommend running up to 3 copies of Gamma Seal the Sea Turtle Kaiju to help you break boards. In the worst case scenario, if you don't need it, you can always discard it for an effect. And my final recommendation for the side deck is copies of the other Abyss scale equip cards, in this case Cetus and Kraken, for when you'd rather negate traps or monsters as opposed to spells like Mizuchi has. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, keep an eye out for more Rogue Tuesdays coming up. In the comments, I want to know what your favorite tech piece is for the Water.Dek strategy, whether that's something kind of straightforward like the Frog engine, or if it's something way crazier like Unexpected Die and 7-colored fish. Anyways, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.